Tonight is a special night. You get to witness an Anagārika ordination. And this is the first stage in the ordination process for anybody who wants to become a Buddhist monk in the Theravada Thai forest tradition at Anagārika. And it is a big step. It's a big step to take. And I'll just explain a little bit about each stage of the process as we go. So I'll invite Garrett to come up and we'll begin the ordination. Kolga.
Sambado garavaso rajopato avokaso pabbaja naidam sukarang agarang ajavasata ekanta paripunang ekanta parisudang Sankalikitang brahmacharyang charitung yanunaham kesamasum oharitva akasayani vatani achadetva agarasama anagariyang pavajayang. The household life is cramped and dusty. The homeless life is free as air. It is not easy, living the household life, to live the fully perfected holy life, purified and polished like a conch shell. Suppose I were to shave off my hair and beard, don the robes of a Buddhist monastic, and go forth from the household life into homelessness.
This is a stock phrase from the Buddhist teachings. This in Pali and English, so no need to translate it because you've already translated it for everybody. But that it's recognizing the constraints of the normal way of living, that wanting to devote oneself to spiritual practice more. So you can take these whites and go put them on and come back. So Garrett has been coming and living at Anagārika on and off for the past year or so, and so now taking that next step, having formally requested Anagārika ordination at quite a young age. Today is his 24th birthday. And And so that phrase that he recited, it's donning the robes of a Buddhist monastic. Of course, this is just the white attire of an Anagārika. And for the Anagārika, they're still 1 foot in the world, 1 foot in the monastery, following the 8 precepts, just like any guest who comes here for an overnight stay. Those precepts don't change, but it is more of a commitment in that they'll be learning how to be more like a Buddhist monk, eating in the lineup, in the dining hall, eating in silence, and also having more duties and more directly managing things in the monastery. And so all of the precepts are the same, it is quite a big commitment. And it's if monastic vocation is the right path for one, then the 1 year as an Anagārika and the 1 year as a novice or samanera, that can show people whether this lifestyle is something that's going to be beneficial and efficacious for them. And of course, it's not for everybody, but some people can take it on and derive great benefit from it, and following precepts and being a shining example, a sterling example for others as they go through the training. And these precepts, they are quite constraining, but at the same time, there's a brightening quality that they have. And also, it's a practice in mindfulness. The Anagārikas, they wear white, so just keeping your whites clean is a practice in and of itself. They get to know how to use bleach, how to keep the whites from being stained. Sometimes especially difficult while working in the kitchen. And so when Garrett comes back, he will be formally requesting the 3 refuges and the 8 precepts. And after he does that, and then I give him the precepts, then there will be an explanation about each of those precepts, as is the tradition during Anagārika ordination ceremonies, and the meanings of the 3 refuges of Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, what we call the triple gem. Give an explanation of all of those things. And after that, he'll actually be doing another short ceremony called taking dependence. In Pali, we call it Nisaya, where actually pledging oneself to the teacher. The teacher is here in this community, and also it's a further gesture of making a formal commitment to the training. Sometimes it's not always clear what Buddhism is. Is it a religion? Is it a philosophy? And we could say it's a training. It's a training in ethical conduct, in virtuous conduct, body, speech, and mind. That's also one way to think about it. But it is a religion in the sense that a religion is something that you commit yourself wholeheartedly to. So in that sense, that it is a religion. It's more of we say it's more of a training because it's not about taking on a certain set of beliefs and holding to them necessarily, but it's more about living a life of contemplation, investigation, and looking into things, getting to know oneself. That's all encompassed by the training that's provided here. And when Anagārika Garrett comes back, he'll be wearing his pavillon, which is a training robe that the Anagārikas wear that gets them used to having a robe of sorts. And this is something that when they leave the monastery, when they're out and about on a town trip or maybe driving on the weekly alms round, they'll be wearing their pavillon. So just being in that training robe and bowing and moving about, that can create, there can be quite a lot of mindfulness that can be developed from that as well. So Garrett will be having to train with that in the first few days, few weeks as an Anagārika, just getting used to the new outfit, the new uniform.
Aham bante tisaranena saha atta silani yachami dutiyampi aham bante tisaranena saha atta silani yachami tatiyampi aham bante tisaranena saha Atta silani yachami.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Buddhaṃ saranam gacchami.
Buddhaṃ saranam gacchami.
Dhammam saranam gacchami.
Dhammam saranam gacchami.
Sangham saranam gacchami.
Sangham saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhaṃ saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhaṃ saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammam saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammam saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi sangham saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi sangham saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhaṃ saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhaṃ saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammam saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammam saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi sangham saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi sangham saranam gacchami.
Ti saranakamanam nititaṃ.
Amabante.
Panatipata veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Panatipata veramani sikapadam samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature.
Adina dana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adina dana veramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given.
Abrahmacharya veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Abrahmacharya veramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from any intentional sexual activity.
I undertake the precept to refrain from any intentional sexual activity.
Musavada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musavada veramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from lying.
I undertake the precept to refrain from lying.
Sura meraya maja pamadatana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Sura maraya maja pamadatana veramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness.
I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness.
Vikala bhojana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Vikala bhojana veramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from eating at inappropriate times.
I undertake the precept to refrain from eating at inappropriate times.
Nacha gita varita visukadasana malaganda vilepana dharana mandana vibhusanatana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Nacha gita varita visukarasana mala ganda vilepana dharana mandana vibhusanatana veramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from entertainment, beautification, and adornment.
I undertake the precept to refrain from entertainment, beautification, and adornment.
Uchasayana mahasayana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Uchasayana mahasayana veramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from lying on a higher luxurious sleeping place.
I undertake the precept to refrain from lying on a higher luxurious sleeping place.
Imani yata sikkhapadani samadhiyami.
Imaniyata sikkhapadani samadhiyami. Imaniyata sikkhapadani samadhiyami. Imaniyata sikkhapadani samadhiyami.
Imaniyata sikkhapadani silena sugating yanti silena boga sampada silena nibuting yanti tasama silang visota ye.
Sadhu Bhante.
3 times. You can sit comfortably now and give your toes a break. It takes a while to get used to sitting on your toes like that, and it's for the chanting and everything. But they in Wat Papong in Thailand at Ajahn Chah's monastery, they sit on their toes for a long time during the evening chanting. So you can build up over time, and the toes can get more flexible. But it's not just about toe flexibility. It also is about these precepts that you're taking on, the refuges and precepts. So I'll go through them through the precepts first, and then explain a little bit about the refuges. And these 8 precepts, there's a couple different forms of the precepts. There's the 8 precepts and the 5 precepts. So for lay people, lay practitioners, the 5 precepts is the first 5 is what you recited, except the 3rd precept you've said in refraining from any intentional sexual activity. So if for your standard lay precepts, if somebody's just taking the 5 precepts, your average Buddhist householder, that 3rd precept would just be refraining from sexual misconduct. But because you're taking on the 8 precepts, which are the renunciate precepts, that becomes full celibacy, and then also the 6th, 7th, and 8th precepts get added on there. So there are these different forms of precepts based on the types of commitment people want to make. And the Anagārika ordination, the white-robed Anagārika, it's really formed after the householders in the time of the Buddha, the white-robed householders or white-clothed householders who would hold the 8 precepts. And there's a few characters in the suttas who'd reached the 3rd stage of the 4 stages of awakening, so the stage known as anagami or non-returner. And so they weren't ordained as monks, but they were renunciate lay people, and they would wear white. There's famous names in the suttas like Panchakanga or Gatikara the potter, who lived very, very simply, wore white, and had already attained insight into the teachings and lived by the 8 precepts. So that's what we follow with the Anagārika ordination. The first precept is quite self-explanatory. Of course, we don't kill here at this, and in the Buddha's teachings, in the precepts, we don't intentionally kill anything. We don't slap mosquitoes when they're on our arms. That's where it would realistically come up. Of course, we're not going to be doing coarser forms of killing, like killing people, which is would be the very worst, or even killing animals or insects. So we're not intentionally killing those things. And this is a practice of mindfulness for us. We might get bit by a horsefly or something, and to not, slap it or kill it, but just to gently brush it away. And this is a practice of ours. The second precept is refraining from taking that which is not given, or we could say refraining from stealing. So this is something that's very strongly held in our communities, that if we don't have a right to something, or something hasn't been given to the community, then we wouldn't take something. Or when we're out in the town or visiting someone's home, we wouldn't just take something. We train ourselves to take just that which is given to us. So this is a training in higher ethical conduct, integrity. The third precept is the refraining from any intentional sexual activity. So that is celibacy, and in the Buddhist renunciate communities, we hold these very strict precepts of celibacy. And this is to be able to, it's a tight container that causes us to be able to see the mind more clearly. And actually, this is, it's very good that it's clear, that it's a clear precept, and that it's just that we just refrain from any form of self-stimulation sexually or in sexual activity with others. That's just a very, very strongly held precept in these communities. And we use the Buddha's practices of both meditation and also reflection on the, say, unattractive nature of the interior of one's body and the bodies of others, in order to practice with these things and transmute these energies that are very natural. And there are ways to work with it yogically, and so we train with that in this community. And also it helps to, the celibacy role helps us to conserve our energy and direct it fully toward spiritual practice. The fourth precept, refraining from lying. I actually like the old translation that we used of this, which is refraining from false or harmful speech. So it's literally musavada does mean false speech, which means in the most literal translation is lying, but then it also refers to the fourfold, refraining from the fourfold wrong speech, which is lying, divisive speech, harsh speech, and idle chatter. So those are considered the 4 wrong types of speech, and then refraining from those is considered wholesome speech, speaking what is useful, beneficial, connected with the practice. Sometimes it might be just if there's speech with a reason. So idle chatter is, it's actually defined as speech which is useless, but if we're being there for someone or lending an ear or helping somebody out, the speech can be lighthearted and it can be idle, chattery a little bit, but if it has a point, if it's not completely useless, then it's not considered idle chatter. So sometimes we might think, oh, I'm engaging in idle chatter, but if your speech actually has a purpose, or if you're helping somebody out, or you're helping to lift somebody's spirits, that can be helpful as well. So we don't want to become grim kind of practitioners. We do want to be lighthearted, not have it be too heavy. So lying is the heart of that precept, but there is the other aspects of right speech that we focus on. Then we get into the 5th precept, which is refraining from intoxicants. And those are specifically, the Buddha talked about alcohol as the basis of negligence, and it isn't considered bad karma or necessarily wrong to drink or take drugs. Doing that in and of itself is not bad, but then they become the basis for breaking the other precepts. So they do create problems in that sense. So living with a very clear mind, clear heart, a healthy body, healthy mind. That's the refraining from intoxicants. The 6th precept, vikala bhojana, that's defined as eating just between dawn and midday. So that follows the monk's rules, that if it's before dawn, what we call dawn rise, where it's defined as like when we can see the lines in our hand at an arm's length, is considered light enough to start eating. As the time of year changes, that time slightly changes. And when we have daylight savings time, we go till 1 p.m. And on November 3rd, that'll change to be at noon. The cutoff for eating would be. So we'd start having our meal slightly earlier, at 10:45 at that time. So noon and between dawnrise and midday. Literally, it's the zenith of the sun, but we just make it easy by saying daylight savings 1 p.m. outside of that noon as a close enough kind of standard. Then we have entertainment, beautification, and adornment. It's the 7th precept. Of course, in Pali, there's more than 3 words. It's Nacha, Gita, Wadita, Visuka, Dasana, Mala, Ganda, Vilepana, Dharana, Mandana, Vibhu, Sanatana. That's 10 words. And that's translated as entertainment, beautification, and adornment. So beautification doesn't mean that you're not going to be a beautiful Anagārika. You are going to be a beautiful Anagārika, bright and white and shining, these shiny, bright whites that you're wearing. That hopefully you'll be able to learn how to keep clean. But it means, it's literally like unguents, scents, like cologne, singing, dancing, going to shows. So that's, it really specifically is about like a public perception, public appearance as a religious seeker, that one has some modicum of restraint and mindfulness that one is displaying to society, and also that you're just living in a very natural way. And I recently heard the Buddha described as like the original natural man. So it's like Buddhism is all about natural truths and living naturally and living in a very ordinary and natural way. So we're not say, using any form of cosmetics, wearing jewelry, wearing necklaces, wearing all sorts of things. When people come to the monastery, we have them take their jewelry off, earrings and whatnot. But then we do make an exception if, like, some people have had like nose rings and things where it's like grown, the skin is like grown around it. They're very painful to take out. Then we would make an exception, but usually people take their jewelry off in the monastery. And so living in a very ordinary way, and listening to music, things like that we refrain from in the monastery. So as a summary, we could say entertainment, beautification, and adornment, but it's really like going to shows like we wouldn't go to the movie theater, and playing music as well, dancing. So that's probably not going to be an issue for you. I'm not sure, but we'll see. And refraining from those things while undergoing the training. Then it's the 8th precept is refraining from higher luxurious sleeping places. This one might sound a little bit strange to people who aren't familiar with it, but it actually is a standard of spiritual practitioners to sleep on a low place, so like a yoga mat or a thermarest on the floor. For the guest dwelling places, we do have beds, but then for the monastic dwelling places, then it's either, something very, very simple. In Thailand, they just use these little roll-out straw mats that the monks sleep on, and something very easy to collect up, very easy to look after. And we can have beds, but the standard is it's not supposed to be more than 8 fingerprints bed legs high, so a low bed. So not a really amazing bed with a canopy over it or something, like some sort of palace. We want to refrain from palatial beds and just use something very simple. Also, there's a saying in the Tudong Kamatana, the Tudong practice tradition, the old practice tradition of the monks in Thailand, that when you go to the dwelling place of a great forest monk, you won't usually be able to tell where they sleep. It won't be immediately apparent. Like there won't be like a special, like really well-kept sleeping area. It'll be a bit more like you'll have to look around to figure out where they actually sleep, where they put their mat out. It won't be apparent because the dwelling place won't be geared around sleeping. It'll be geared around meditation and putting forth effort and studying. So that's the 8th precept. And then also to go through the refuges, which you took at the beginning, refuge in Buddha Dhamma Sangha. Just a summary of those is that refuge, sarana, Buddhang saranang gacchami, that means I go for refuge in the Buddha. And sarana it's a refuge, it's a place of safety. So I go to this as a place of safety, Buddha Dhamma Sangha. Buddha on the external level is the Buddha who was the Prince Siddhartha Gautama, who lived almost 2,600 years ago in India, in the north of India, who went forth from household life into homelessness and attained awakening, and then spent 45 years of a ministry teaching his insights to others. That's the external refuge of Buddha. Buddha means the awakened one. Dhamma is the Dhamma that the Buddha taught. In that 45 years, the collected corpus of teachings and all of the commentaries and the lineages and great meditators who have passed down the teachings and gained insight into them themselves. So the Dhamma teachings, that would also Ajahn Chah's teachings and the teachings of any meditation masters that we follow here. That would be Dhamma on the external level, and then Sangha on the external level is the community of practitioners. Sangha literally just means community. But the Sangha, we take refuge in not necessarily the monastic community, but Savaka Sangha. So we take refuge in the community of any practitioners, monastic or lay, who have gained insight into the teachings. That's the Savaka Sangha. So it's not just taking refuge in the monastic community, but it's taking refuge and relying on the lay community of practitioners as well. That's included in Sangha. On the internal level, Buddha means the internal Buddha. When we practice Buddho recitation. When we breathe in, breathing out to, we use the method of Buddho as a mental recitation when we're meditating, and that is the internal Buddha. So that's the awakened one internally, or the purified knowing. So Buddho is that the inherent Buddha in all of us. Dhamma, on the internal level, is the truth of the way things are. So that knowing the internal Buddha, the knowing knows the truth of the way things are internally. So that's part of our investigation, and just through developing a settled and quiet mind, then investigating the truth of the way things are, particularly the truth of anicca, or impermanence, uncertainty, and in being able to, that internal knowing, being able to investigate that. And then internally, the meaning of sangha is virtue itself, so you can actually rely on that as a refuge. I say virtue is the best protection. So the only time, in Thailand, there's a culture of amulets. A lot of people are really into amulets in Thailand as protections, and would think, okay, I'll be protected if I wear this amulet. But the one time Ajahn Chah was known to give out a few amulets, he told people, they'll only work if you keep the 5 precepts. Otherwise, it won't work. It won't protect you. So it's more of a way to get people to keep the precepts, because the precepts are the best protection. So internally, sangha means virtue, means ethical conduct, or the internal virtue that you develop in yourself through the keeping of precepts. So that's the external and the internal meaning of Buddha Dhamma Sangha, and also just a brief exposition on the 8 precepts. And by the way, if you break one of these precepts, you don't have to leave. We won't kick you out. But it is important to just let me or a trusted senior monk know about the breach of the precepts, and then you would retake them if one gets broken. And it's natural that these training guidelines will be either broken or compromised, because you're living your life in this way now, and it's going to be somewhat new to live these precepts long term and actually live your life according to them. So it's natural that they might get modeled or blemished at times, and you can then let somebody know, talk about it, and then we pick you back up and you keep going. So they're training guidelines. So now we can move on to the next part of the ceremony, and that is the taking of dependence. So you can just go straight into that chant. You don't need to start by bowing or anything.
Acharyo me banse hohi ayasmato nisaya vachami. Acharyo me banse hohi ayasmato nisaya vachami. Acharyo me banse hohi ayasmato nisaya vachami.
O paikang
Sadhu bante,
pati rupang
sadhu bante,
pasadikena sampadehi.
sadhu bante. Ajatage dani tero, maihang baro, ahampi tera sabaro. Ajatage dani tero, maihang baro, ahampi tera sabaro. Ajatage dani tero, maihang baro, ahampi tera sabaro.
Sit comfortably again. And just a brief explanation of that taking of dependence ceremony. The first part of it, Acharyo me bante hohi ayasamato nisayo wachami, that means may I take the Venerable One as my teacher, may you be my teacher. So, and then I recited a few things, O paikang, like it is good, pati rupang, it is well, pasati kena sampadehi, it's suitable. So that's the accepting you as a student of the monastery, and then the ajatage dani tero maihang baro ahampi tero sabaro that you recited 3 times. That is, that means I am now a burden of the Venerable One or the elder, and now the elder is also my burden. So that's, you've taken dependence on me as the teacher, but then the understanding of this monastery, it's also the other senior monks and the community that will be teaching and training you, so it won't just be myself. And then you will be a burden on us that we're willingly taking on, that we will teach you the ropes and show you how to be a monastic. And then also it's there's a give and take where we will be a burden on you as well, and that you'll be involved in serving the monastery in various ways, possibly being the kitchen manager at some point, and also just keeping an eye open how to help out. So you've already been doing this, so you'll just be doing more of that. But then also there's various things that'll change in terms of your training now that you're in Anagārika, because it is a bit more of a container, a little bit tighter than being just your average layperson staying in the monastery. You'll have a bowl and be eating with the monks in the lineup, eating with the monastic community, and that promotes more mindfulness and makes your meal into more of a practice. And just in a practical sense, it makes your life different in that you can't just hang out around the buffet table after the meal and graze, and it's a bit more constrained. So, not being able to go back for seconds, things like that just we might take for granted as lay people in the monastery. And other things, just like you'll be trained how to wash your bowl in a certain way, and just be more mingling with the monastic community. So there will be a bit more of a separation from the lay people you've been mingling with to date. Of course, you'll be having like breakfast and tea time still in the kitchen, but you get like a locker, for example, in with the other Anagārikas. And so you won't be in the lay annex anymore. You'll have more access to, you gain access to the MUB, the Monks Utility Building up above, where you'll be able to make use of that more. And so you very much are much more part of the monastic community when you're in Anagārika. So there are privileges associated with it there. And so, yeah, and I'll also just to say sadhu, which is the Buddhist version of amen. Say sadhu to your aspiration and your willingness to train, and welcome to the Anagārika life. So at this point, I'll invite you to take your seat there, and also if you had did you have another tray for Paul?
I offered it already.
Oh, you offered it already. Okay, very good.
Grab my chanting books.
Oh yeah, you've got your, this was stuck to your sitting cloth. So, yeah, okay. He's got a little cloth there. It says cloth for setting under his chanting book to show respect toward it and not set it on the directly on the floor. Very good. I think you're the first Anagārika to have that included in your requisite set. Also, before we do our closing chant, just to say today is the Lunar Observance Day, but we won't have a late night vigil this evening. We'll just close after the after the closing chant. There's some things happening. Of course, there won't be like a midnight tea or 3 a.m. chanting. But if anybody would like to stay a little bit later and meditate in the hall, of course you're more than welcome to. But there won't be the formal late night vigil this evening. And then just to show up for 6:30 a.m. chores tomorrow morning if you're staying in the monastery. There's also most of the monastic community is going to a house blessing and meal dana across the street tomorrow, so there will only actually be like 2 monks here for the mealtime, plus the monks who are on retreat. So it'd be a more of a limited kitchen crew, but you're welcome, for those of you staying in the monastery, you're welcome to check in with the kitchen, with the Anagārikas, and see if you could help out with it. But it'll be a much smaller meal tomorrow here.
We can close with a chant on page 37 of Book 1, Buddha's Words on Loving Kindness.
This is what should be done
by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another, or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child. So with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of being freed from all sense desires, is not born again